So welcome everybody to Viking Vitals Club. Super chill, friendly place to get some advice, ideas, encouragement, motivation, reminder not to quit on your semester, whatever. And so I'm glad you're all here. Quite a few names I recognize from my classes. If you want to pop into the chat and tell us what your career ideas and goals are, that would be great. But we have two awesome guests here tonight, Philip Patrick and Joanne Mendoza from UCI. And they are in, let's see, Patrick, the first year of med school, right? And Joanne, in your second year, is that right?
No, I'm the first year as well.
Okay, awesome. Almost second years though, right? When do you guys officially change titles?
2 weeks.
All right,
Yeah,
way to go. So it looks like we have like some nurses in the crowd, emergency medicine, physical therapy, but I think just hearing about your med school experience, but then also things like time management, stress management, wellness, like all of the above kind of will be helpful, and just figuring your lives out in general too, right? That's hard at your point in life. So anyways, welcome Philip and Joanne. Welcome all of our students that are here. Why don't you start by just introducing yourself and kind of, I don't know, a few minutes maybe of how you figured out what you were going to do. Med school, that's what you're doing now. But so introduce yourself and then a little bit about your story. So Philip, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Philip, or you can call me PJ. I'm from the Bay Area. I lived there my whole life, and then I went to undergrad in Mississippi, and I graduated in 2020, in May of 2020, in the middle of COVID. It was kind of crazy, but yeah. Now I'm at UCI, just finishing my first year. I in high school, I was like, I liked certain subjects, like I always like biology, but I didn't really like the classes where I had a lot of busy work. I like homework. To me, it was like, why am I doing this homework? Like, if let me just take a test and then forget about the homework. Like that was how I was thinking about it, because I was like, I don't need to do it, but you do need to do it. And it took me like a while to figure that out. And in high school, like I wasn't super motivated. Like some people were just like super motivated to like go to like the best college and everything out of high school, which is like great. But took me a little longer to figure out what I wanted to do and why. So I ended up going to school in Mississippi, and I majored in biology because that was always my favorite subject. And I figured I'd like just do the pre-med track because that just seemed like what everybody else was doing in biology. But I didn't know anything about how to go to medical school. I didn't have any doctors in my family. So I was just going to class and trying to get like pretty good grades. But I didn't realize that there's a lot more that goes into it, like research and shadowing and volunteering. And it just seemed, and I figured that out kind of at the end of my second year. And I was kind of overwhelmed. I was like, okay, there's no way I'm going to be able to get all this done. Like, this is just too much. So I was like kind of having a quarter life crisis. And I was like, I guess I'm just going to go be a chiropractor because this is too, like, there's way too much stuff to go to medical school. I'm not going to be able to do any of this. But I ended up going to like a medical school panel. It was like a medical school day where everybody who was interested in pre-health would go to the medical school in Mississippi. And there was a panel of a bunch of students just talking about their journey and what they did, and how they took like gap years. I didn't even know gap years was a thing, like taking time after you graduate to go to medical school. I thought you just had to go straight in, or it was like you couldn't go in. But like most of them took at least 1 or 2 gap years to get all the other stuff done. And so that kind of made me feel better. And I kind of kept pushing. And then I got to do some research after my junior year in Arkansas. And even though I did not like it at all, it was like bench research. And you were in there with like pipettes and mice. And it was not for me. Like some people love it, but that was not for me. But it was a good experience because I did learn a lot. And I also, lots of mice. Yeah, it's those labs. If you're like an animal lover, those labs can be a rough place. But yeah, so So I went there, and I also got to shadow while I was there, and I got to go into the OR and see brain surgery. And that was like the coolest thing I'd ever seen. It was just nuts. Like they were using like a melon baller and scooping tumors out of people's brains, and it was insane. And I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. Like, I want to be in here. I like the OR. And once I had that experience, that kind of lit more of a fire into me, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna figure out what I need to do. Doesn't matter how long it's gonna have to take. I'll figure it out. And yeah, so I kept looking up more information about how to get into medical school, and talking to more people and reaching out to people at my school. And I had a lot of support, thankfully. And yeah, so I applied, and I was able to start at UCI back in August. So and I love it. Like, honestly, it's like the best. I'd be really upset at myself if I didn't keep doing that and gave up. But yeah, that's my story, I guess.
Awesome. I know how hard it is to just try and distill all of those years into a short story there, but I appreciate how you talked about, you had the bench job, but like you still learned from it. You had this other aha, probably even just that first time you shouted into the OR where it was like, this was the day that I needed to like drive me forward. So it doesn't even take that much sometimes, just a moment that's like, yeah, this is it. That's cool. How about you, Joanne? You want to tell us kind of a bit of your story?
Yeah, so I am originally from Whittier in Southern California, but I mostly grew up in San Diego. And I went to UCSD first as an engineering major, as an electrical engineering major, because I liked calculus and I wanted to do more higher math. My mom was actually a nurse growing up in labor and delivery. And she was like, oh, you do so well in bio, like you should go into medicine. And I'm very stubborn. So I was like, don't tell me what to do. I'm not going to do medicine. And then my dad was like, just don't do engineering. And I was like, you know what? That sounds like a great idea. I'm going to do engineering. Then I did my first classes and hated it and realized how passionate people were about engineering and how that was not the fire that was in me. So I did fall back on what I knew I liked in high school, which was immunology, learning about viruses. And I really liked my major, but I didn't know that I was going to do medicine. I looked at trying to do research. I hated it. I did like a month and was like, this is not for me. I tried looking, I talked to and interviewed a geneticist to look at genetics and trying to find genetic counseling and looking for alternative routes, just because there's a lot of pre-med at UCSD. And I knew that this was a very big journey, and that if there was anything else that could make me just as happy without all the work, I wanted to do that to make it easier on myself. And I just didn't find anything else that could really inspire me as much or light that fire. Like I said, I'm very stubborn. So, seeing certain people and seeing certain doctors, just my own health issues, I see them, and if I didn't like the way I was treated by them, it was like, well, if I was in your position, I could do this, I would do that, I would give them this. And so it was kind of, that was what was lighting the fire in me. And my interactions with the healthcare system is kind of what showed me that, you know what, I'm gonna go and be that provider that I needed. And that's kind of where I ended up. It wasn't an easy journey. I mean, I had to take gap years. I graduated in 2019. I took 2 gap years because I knew I was not going to be able to study for a standardized test for the MCAT and do school. I just know myself, I'm not good at that. Undergrad was very difficult for me. And I needed a lot of personal growth. I needed to go through a lot. And I knew just mentally, I didn't know what I needed, but I knew I wasn't ready to go into med school yet. And everybody was like, by taking gap years, you're gonna forget how to study, you're gonna get unmotivated. But if it's truly something you're passionate about and you want to do, you will keep yourself accountable. Going to conferences, listening to people talk is what kept me inspired and reminding me of why I wanted to do this. So that's a piece of my advice, is to continue to surround yourself and put yourself in those spaces with other people who want to go into medicine, who are passionate about it and who are passionate about service to others. I think that's the biggest thing, is something that I found very unique in healthcare that was different than people around me was just that they cared. They were very like nice. They wanted the best for people, and they didn't just assume, oh, that person's just dumb or that person just doesn't get it. It was like, no, they don't understand because their background, the education that they had, the families that they come from, the immigrant family, you know, just looking at the person as a whole and being understanding. And that was something that I don't think I really saw in any other field that I was exposed to, and why I really admire medicine. I know that was kind of a tangent, but yeah.
We're here for the tangents. I love it. Yeah, I appreciate how you said a few times that you were so stubborn, and that keeps you going, right? Like you have to be stubborn to get through school and to create a different kind of care than what you've received. I think it was a church pastor used to say, if you sit here and you're just thinking, I could do that better, I could do that better, he's like, maybe you should be in leadership. And that advice has kind of stuck with me. When you sit there and you're like, I could do this better, instead of thinking like I'm the most critical person in the world, like, okay, let me go get the knowledge and the skills to like run this place. So maybe kind of along those lines, and then there's one question in chat and we'll get to in a little bit. Feel free to drop any other questions in chat, guys, and Philip and Joanne, feel free to reply in chat too. But I think, Philip, you're in the ABC, so the African Black Caribbean emphasis of the med school there, is that right?
Yeah, it's like we call it Lead ABC program.
Okay, and then Joanne, I think you're in the LC, which is that's the Latino community, or correct me on that?
Prime LC, Latino communities.
Okay, so you started to mention that a little bit, Joanne, about, you know, wanting to help your community and some of those underserved populations, people that are not represented in medicine well. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about, you know, coming out of COVID, we've seen the healthcare disparities, and I'm sure you are more aware and knowledgeable about that than I am, but a lot of our students come from backgrounds similar to you guys. What are you learning? What are you excited about? What are you passionate to change? Like, do you want to talk about that piece a little bit, whether it's whatever that sparks in you, whatever you would want to talk about on coming from maybe an underrepresented background and then wanting to serve some of those communities that have different needs that maybe aren't being met by the medical establishment now, right? Philip, you want to start? I don't know if that's question is clear or prompt is clear, but.
Yeah, sure. So one thing that like I really enjoy, and Joanne too, one thing that I really wanted to do once I got into medical school, now that I'm in medical school, when I leave medical school, become a resident attending is like mentorship, because especially with medicine, it's really difficult to get into medical school if you don't have a blueprint or like a plan or a pathway like lined up for you. And if you don't know anybody and you're at a place or a school where like at my school, nobody really went to medical school. It was maybe like one student a year made it to medical school. And even though there's a lot of people in the biology department, it was really difficult because there wasn't really a blueprint for people to follow. And so for me, like, I think the smallest representation of providers right now is African American male physicians, and so I've been really trying to recruit more into this field of medicine because there's not a lot of us. I'm the only. Well, there's like me and one more in my class. There's like two of us out of a class of 104 students at UCI, and it's, you know, and you know, Black men are disproportionately affected by a lot of different things like prostate cancer and high blood pressure and all these kinds of things. And when you have a provider that knows where you come from or that you can relate to culturally, socially, it makes a really big difference in seeking out care, and this just improves trust with your physician. And that's like, there's hundreds of studies on that have shown that time and time again. And so, you know, if I really want to make an impact on people like myself, I think the best way would be to get more of us in the field of medicine, and in diverse fields of medicine too, all over. You know, primary care, surgery, anesthesia, internal medicine, whatever it is. So that's kind of been my mission since I've been here. is trying to reach out to different organizations and schools and trying to help people that generally don't get a mentor in that field, and give them advice that I wish that I had when I was in their position. So and Lead ABC gives me a lot of freedom to do that and support to do that. And yeah, it's been awesome.
Awesome, thank you. Joanne, you want to talk about that, kind of some of those ideas?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of mention about the mentorship thing is that something I've heard people say is, oh, I already have a mentor, but you know, it takes a village of mentors to get you here. You definitely need more than one. You take a little bit, a grain of salt from everybody, and that's what helps you build kind of where you're going in your path. Everybody has a different experience, so you want to hear from everybody and figure out who you kind of mesh with most and what they can give you versus others. Like, is it personal mentorship? Is it going to be specifically like application mentorship? Is it about just, you know, sticking to the journey kind of mentorship? You can never have too many mentors. So definitely, if anybody offers, go for it. Or even at conferences, like keynote speakers, I would email them after if I saw a Latina and I was like, oh my God, yes, like I am reaching out to you. And she ended up being a really close mentor of mine, helped me with the NCAT and everything, and opened up a lot of doors for me and introduced me to new mentors that really helped me on this path that I could not have done alone and probably wouldn't be here today without all that mentorship. And with that, so for Prime LC, sorry, I'm like, I have a million thoughts in my head right now. And I think about what I was going to say earlier too. About just wanting to serve the Latino population coming from, I'm Latina, so coming from a family of immigrants. My grandfather was in the Bracero program. If you don't know about that, you should definitely look it up. And learning about the history, because we do a Chicano Latino studies class as part of our curriculum in the Prime LC program. And understanding that basis is kind of what I was talking about earlier about understanding the background of people and not blaming them for, you know, their health issues or what they're doing wrong or this non-compliance. It's really about understanding where they come from, even as an individual and the population level and as a group. So that's something that I really enjoy because I think in healthcare, I mean, racism is everywhere. So it's like healthcare included. And there's been providers or nurses and doctors who will say comments like, I think I've heard of like III syndrome, is just kind of blaming like Latino women of just complaining all the time or saying they're doing it for attention because, you know, their husband doesn't pay attention to them at home unless, you know, they're in pain. And so kind of these assumptions, it's like, you really shouldn't, like, I don't want you treating my family. I don't want you treating me if you have that kind of mentality. And again, that stubbornness is, I want to do better. You know, I want to do this and I want to treat the people the way they should be treated and understand where they're coming from and try to hear them out. And so for me, it's more personal as somebody who is from that background, but it carries on to other backgrounds as well, as understanding that, you know, I know your culture may be a little bit different and your priorities are a little bit different, but hearing you tell me, you know, you're doing this because XYZ and family's important. Like, I can understand that, and I understand why now you're in this position with your health and why you came here late or something. So I think it's valuable lessons that go across to all populations. It's not something where I'm like, oh, I'm only going to see Latino populations, right? It's I'm going to see all underserved populations, and studying this way and helping in a mission-based program is going to allow me to be a better provider to all patients.
Awesome. Thank you both for those insights. Yeah, I have nothing to add. But I think, actually, yes, I want to speak to the mentorship that both of you mentioned. And I really like how you mentioned, Joanne, it takes a village of mentors. And I saw Philip nodding his head there. I've been reading up on mentoring a little bit, and I read a really good article a while ago that talked about how you have formal mentors and you have informal mentors. And so I think when we think of mentor, you often think about this one perfect role model that, you know, is your mentor. But in reality, it's it is like Joanne said, and like Philip was talking about, different people at different points along your path. And maybe it's someone your year that finds out something that shares it with you, or the year ahead of you, or someone who's 60, or my best mentors at work have been a bunch of older guys at my job that I have, and they all had kids and they're all super nice and they have the values that I have. And so I'm like, hey, you're my mentors. Like, I connect better with you than some of the women at work. So you never know who you're going to end up finding as a mentor. And it doesn't have to be a lifelong connection. It might be, and it might not be, but soak that up. I appreciate that advice from both of you.
I just want to address those two questions in the chat. For medical school, this is expected to be like your full-time job kind of thing. Very, very few people work during medical school. It's very rare. They kind of discourage it because they want you to do very well in your studies and to focus on this. But I do know, I think only one person that I know has a job right now. And it's just their circumstances, like they don't qualify for any aid. It has to do with citizenship status and things like that. So they kind of do it, but it's not a job where, you know, they're working for the money. They're doing it because it's a passion project. It's working with, you know, like the UCI Dream Center and doing things that aligns with kind of what they enjoy. So it's work, but it's not work in the same way. And I think that's what's unique about it. And also there's tutors. We have tutors here, med students who tutor the class below. So you're a second year med student and you're helping do study sessions for the first years and they get paid. I know that. And then in terms of classes, like I said, this is expected to be your full-time job. So usually it's between like 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. It's usually in the mornings that the classes are. It's not something that you sign up for your classes like it is with undergrad. They give you your schedule. Everybody has the same schedule. We all go to the same class. For us, most of them are optional. I don't go. I just watch recordings at home. But for the most part, everybody has the same schedule, but which is nice because then it's not like, oh, I have an exam here, but then this one, and I'm thinking about this. Like a lot of our courses line up. So like if we're doing the heart, we're doing the heart and anatomy, we're doing the heart and physiology, we're learning how to do the heart exam. So it makes it a little bit easier in a way because everything overlaps.
I think that kind of addressed Leslie's question also about the evening classes. Leslie, let us know if you want to tag on to that, but kind of in Joanne's description there of the schedule, let us know if you want to ask more about that. And then we have another question. Do you ever find yourself trying to overcome imposter syndrome? Go ahead, either one of you.
Yeah, I'll start. I don't think it's hit me quite yet. I think once because first year, most of what we're doing is in the classroom. Most of the time we're going to lectures, we're taking notes, we're learning like the basic science aspect of medicine and how everything works. And we do have a class where we practice with, like, they call them standardized patients, which is basically like actors that come in and say, hey, I'm having pain here. And then we have to practice interviewing them and asking all the questions we're supposed to ask, and practice doing physical exams on them as well. And then they record it, and at the end of the year, we get graded on, you know, our physical exams and how we interview them. But it hasn't quite hit me yet, the imposter syndrome. I think third year, which is when you're just in the hospital doing, they call it your rotations, where basically you're working with the doctors, with the residents all day, 5 days a week, and that's what you do. So it's not really classes anymore. You might occasionally do some classes every now and then, but mainly you're just on the job training basically. And I think that's probably when, at least me personally, I'll probably feel it more, because that's when it's like, okay, it's real life. It's not practice. It's not a game. Like, this is like, these are people coming in with actual diseases that need to be fixed. So I personally, I haven't really experienced imposter syndrome yet, but yeah, I'm sure at some point I will, and every doctor you talk to will say at some point they felt it.
Yeah, I think sometimes imposter syndrome doesn't always show up as this kind of big, moment where you're freaking out all the time. it can just be these little things like, oh man, should I, like, am I sure I'm ready for this? Or, you know, like questioning yourself and your capabilities, which I think is something we all do, especially if you're a person of color or you're in a space that's just not traditionally with your identity, whether it be as gender or racial ethnicity. But it's kind of an indication that you're reflecting. And that's how I've heard of it, how it can be like the silver lining of it. People who are overcompetent are the ones that don't experience or think they're overcompetent, who don't experience imposter syndrome, and they're the ones who make mistakes because they come from more privilege and they just think, you know, this is where I should be and this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Like I deserve it, and it's very entitled feeling. So having that. Not humility, but what is it? Oh my God, starts with an H. Humble. Being humble. Yeah, and being able to reflect. And it happens when you're going into something like medicine. That's a very high achieving job, and you're being very selfless by giving, you know, your whole profession to helping other people. And you're going to question, like, am I worthy enough to be doing this for other people? And that's normal, especially I think in medicine. So it's just remember that, you know, you're here for a reason. You want to be here for a reason. You're here for good reasons to help others. And anybody can do this, whether or not, you know, it was traditionally in your benefit in the past, or if you're, you know, kind of breaking open as somebody who's of a different gender and different ethnicity or race that isn't usually in this setting, that you're making the change and you're doing this for your patients.
I think that was your question, Marissa. Do you want to follow on with anything there, or?
Yeah, I did. I wanted to know, like when you guys both decided, okay, I'm ready to apply to medical school, I'm ready to do the MCAT, did you guys ever find yourself questioning like, wow, this is really hard. Can I do this?
Yeah, almost every step of the way. And I think they make it unnecessarily difficult. I think just like obviously the MCAT is its own beast because you know, and it costs money, right? Like I think trying to buy the books or buying a UWorld, which is like a big question bank to practice questions, and they do that for all different types of standardized tests. Some people do classes that cost a lot of money. So like just that like is a financial burden as well as just a mental roller coaster trying to, you know, study for a test that's 7 hours and covers everything you learned in undergrad. Yeah, that was rough. And then once you take that and let's say you get a score that you're okay with and you're comfortable applying with, then you have to apply, which is a whole nother process because you have to fill out your primary application, which takes a pretty long time, and then work on your personal statement. And people usually write several drafts for the personal statement and get it reviewed. And then you send in your primary application and then to a bunch of different schools. Mind you, that costs more money. Then the schools will send you secondary applications. Then you do your secondary applications and send those out to usually a little fewer schools, a little bit like narrower in terms of the place you want to go. And each one of those costs money. And then after your secondary application, then they'll reach out with an interview invitation. And our interviews have been on Zoom. I couldn't imagine doing interviews in person. Like thankfully, like my cycles of COVID, everything was on Zoom. But like looking back at like how many interviews I did and trying to imagine flying all over the place trying to do those interviews, like that's insane. So yes, but it's a really long process. So I think almost everyone's just been like, like this takes so much time. And I was like working full time at the same time as a medical assistant. So it was a busy time. But once you're done and you get like your acceptance letter, it's like it's just like everything is like, oh, it's just wash over, just peace. Like that's all you feel because it's just like finally, like I did all this and it paid off. And then once you're in, like I don't know, at least at UCI, like it's a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. It was hard at the beginning because you're trying to figure out how to study so much, but like overall, like I have a lot more free time than I thought I was going to have. I really like my classmates, like genuinely. Like I'm friends with literally all 103 of my classmates I could hang out with. and UCI has a really good culture. Most medical schools aren't like that, but UCI has a really good culture. So now it's like, it was definitely worth it, absolutely. And I'm sure it'll be more worth it once you actually have a job and you're not just living off loans. That'll be more worth it. But yeah, that was at least my experience.
Yeah, kind of similar. I was working full time and studying for the MCAT. It took me I don't know, some people do it in 2 months, like a knot. I took 9 months. I tried to take it early, and my mentor was like, "Girl, no, you are not ready. Do not do it." And so I had to push it back. But the MCAT's an 8-hour test, and it's learning a lot of material. And I was like, man, this is a lot. This is going to be hard. Undergrad was hard for me, but I was like, I just got to do it. People do it. You just got to sit down and start somewhere. And then it is hard, and you're getting a lot of questions wrong when you're learning. And my mentor would tell me, just trust the process. Just trust the process. You'll start seeing your scores on your practice test. It's not going to feel like you're actually learning a lot, but trust the process. And I mean, she was right. It's hard because when you're studying and you're actively studying in a productive way, it takes a lot of mental capacity, a lot of brain work. And you're like, man, I'm dumb. I don't know any of this. I don't remember this. Why do I keep missing these? But over time, it does build up, and it just shows and reflects in your scores. I mean, I had a goal score, and I surpassed that because I took that time and just kind of, kept studying. I studied only 3 hours a day during the week because I was working full time, and then I would do Saturdays and maybe half of Sundays. And then, yeah, it was just during that process, it was hard, but like I said, if you just trust it and you trust your system, that's kind of what kept me going. And again, the mentoring and finding people like-minded, and still continuing to go to conferences and talk to people to keep me inspired and remind me why I'm doing this and what my goal is. I really didn't know what I would do if I wasn't going to be a doctor. I was just like, let me try, let me apply my first cycle, I'll figure out a backup plan if I don't get in. But like PJ said, it's expensive, but they do have the fee assistance program, which is what I applied to. So it covered 20 schools for applications, and then most schools will waive your secondary fees. So I had, a plan, and I had that, and they also help discount the MCAT. They give you some MCAT resources too to study as well. So that fee assistance program saves you hundreds of dollars, if not almost 1,000. So that's something to think about too, that there are options, and there are scholarships like LMSA, I think, has stuff for MCAT or applications. So there's opportunities if you can't afford it, and you just have to kind of look for that. And I'm also putting my email in the chat if you have any further questions.
Awesome, thank you. I was going to say too, if we're going to transition in maybe 2 minutes here to our other speaker, but both of you have mentioned conferences or that fee assistance program. I don't know if you can drop a couple more words about those in the chat to make them searchable for our students here and for me, so I can pass them on to the other students who aren't here. But that would be super, super helpful. Just with our last minute or two, as you talk to pre-health students from all different areas, I think we've heard a lot of good advice and thoughts. Parting 1 minute inspirational advice to the students who are coming up behind you in any of these pre-health professions?
Yeah, if you a lot of the admissions faculty at nursing schools or medical schools, if you reach out to them, a lot of the times they'll get back to you, and you can schedule a meeting with some of them, and they can talk to you about maybe your application. I know at UCI, Dr. Worsham is somebody who's willing to talk to pre-meds who are trying to get into medical school. So oftentimes the programs will actually be willing to talk and help students that are thinking about applying, because it's not, especially for medical school, because during application season they're really busy, but outside of that they're really not that busy. And I'm going to drop a a link to a website that helps you find research programs like all across the country. And that's what I used to find my research program in Arkansas. That's going to be really helpful. I also did a medical mission trip to Costa Rica. 10 out of 10 would recommend that. There was a bunch of like nurses and doctors and just some other like college students that went, and that was like the best trip I've ever been on. So if you are interested in anything in the healthcare profession, like I recommend one of those medical mission trips. But yeah, just keep, and you can do it. Like I wanted to quit so many times. Like if I can do it, believe me, like truly anyone can. Like yeah, I was I had a lot of doubt, but if it's something you really want to do and you just find people to help, shoot me an email and or Joanne, and we'll do what we can to help you out for sure.
Yeah, my advice is take one step at a time. If you keep looking at how long this path is and the things you have to do 10 steps ahead, you're going to get overwhelmed, you're going to get anxious, and you're going to get discouraged, because that's happened to me many, many times. Just focus on what you can do now to get yourself there, and do that as strongly as you can and best as you can. Because, I mean, the journey to any of these is going to be long. So you want to make sure that you're enjoying that process and enjoying your everyday life in the past. Don't be like, okay, well, I'll spend time with my friends when, I get my job. And for me, that's in like 12 years. So I can't be thinking like that. It's about enjoying it now and finding that and continuing to enjoy your life while working on the steps that you can take care of and address at the moment.
Such good thoughts and advice. Thank you both for taking time out of your busy lives to join us tonight. Yeah, thank you a million times over. And I'll share those email and websites out with our group also afterwards. So thank you both so much. Students, if you have other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat too. And if you guys need to head out, go for it. With our last 15-20 minutes here, we have a health professions advisor. We're going to kind of zoom out to a little bit bigger picture. Lena, we haven't met in person. Did I say that right, Lena?
Yes, you did. It's Lena.
Lena, okay. So welcome, Lena.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
She will take over here and talk about kind of a little bit more big picture of some of the broader range of health professions out there, and can address whatever questions you all have. Again, keep them coming in the chat. I am going to actually just stop the recording and restart it so we have a break here. So if you want to just hold on 1 sec for me, Lena, then we'll restart that.